All right, so we have finished sine rule and we move on to something that is a little bit similar, but it's called cosine rule. And it also helps to relate angles to sides of the triangle. But more importantly, for cosine rule, it is the relationship between one of the angles and all of the sides. Okay, one of the angle and all of the sides. So what does cosine rule say? Now, cosine rule, again, I'm just going to use A, B, C to represent the angles respectively. And we have emphasized previously, the side opposite the angle A is A, small a, opposite angle B is small b, and opposite angle C is small c. Okay, so what the cosine rule says, and that is in your formula list, is A square equals to B square plus C square minus 2BC cosine A. Okay, it is very long, yes, but it is in your formula list, so there's no need to memorize. Okay, now, but very importantly, you realize that first things first, this formula uses all three sides, A, B, and C. Okay, and it uses one angle, angle A. So when you want to use this formula, three of the sides and one of the angles must be involved. And secondly, you need to realize that the side that you put here and the angle that you put here must be opposite each other. Okay, they must be opposite each other. Okay, because like I mentioned previously and quite a lot of times previously, a lot of triangles, they don't name it ABC, they name it PQR, XYZ, and so on. Then when you want to use the formula, you don't just change everything to A, B, and C. What you should do is, before you apply the formula, you make sure you apply it correctly. For this one over here, cosine rule, you just want to make sure that the side that you substitute inside here and the angle that you put inside the cosine must be opposite each other. Then the other two sides, you just put inside here, 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 and here. That's all. One is B and the other one is C. Okay, now I mentioned already, the formula has three sides and one angle. So when do you use cosine rule? So again, you need to make sure when to use it and you need to make sure how to use it. Okay, so you use cosine rule when there's one unknown and three given quantities. They add up to three sides, one angle. And like I mentioned above, the angle must be opposite the side that is so-called isolated in the formula, means the one on the left, the side that is by itself, A. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how to apply this formula in two ways. Okay, now let's look at the work example 1 first. Now, in this work example 1, what happens is that you want to find side YZ. Okay, and YZ in this triangle is not a right angle triangle, so don't even think about torcaso, etc. And to find YZ, you need to realize that it is a side. So the question you want to find this. And they gave you two other sides and one angle. So when do you use cosine rule? When you see that there are three sides, one angle, whatever I just highlighted. There's no way you can use sine rule here because you got not enough information to use sine rule. Sine rule needs two sides, two angles. Okay, so how do you use, okay, so when do you use it? You must be able to identify what I just went through. Then the next thing is how to use it. Okay, so let's just take from your formula list. According to your formula list, A square equals to B square plus C square minus 2BC cos A. So I mentioned the A must be opposite each other. Okay, now, so what you need to see or do is to pair up the angle with the opposite side. So YZ is what you want to find, and it happens to be opposite angle A. Okay, so angle A is 23 degrees, and YZ, according to the formula, is A square, so it's YZ square. And then now the other two sides, you can let any one of the two be B, and the other one will be C. So for example, I let 24.7 be B, and I let 16.8 to be C. You square, you add them up, then minus 2 times B, 24.7, C, 16.8, cosine 23. Okay, and now you have to find YZ. And everything on the right is just numbers, which you can press your calculator one shot. And your YZ is actually the square root of the entire thing. Okay, now usually when you have square root, when you have something square, you want to take square root, you will do plus minus square root lah. Okay, but there's no need to consider the negative case here because all length must be positive. Okay, not because I never write, it's because you already know length must be positive, so you don't even bother writing the negative lah. But please take note that every time you have something square equals to something, when you take square root, you need to put plus minus. Okay, now for this question, all you need to do is just to press your calculator now and just press properly. Make sure everything that you put, you square the correct thing, you make sure you square root the entire thing and so on. Okay, and one very weird mistake that I always see for cosine rule is that you all don't write cosine, you all go and put sine inside, which doesn't make sense to me. Okay, it's called cosine rule for a reason. Okay, so when you press a calculator, you should be able to get 11.3 cm, 3 sm. Okay, I'm just going to pause here for a while, give you all some time to digest this. More importantly, know how I identify when to use cosine rule and know how I actually use the cosine rule formula. All right, since everyone's okay, let's move on to work example 2. Now, in work example 2, they never draw a triangle for you, but you can draw it yourself. Okay, now, triangle PQR, inside triangle PQR, they give you certain sides. QR is 12, PQ is 11.8, and PR is 9.8. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to randomly draw a triangle lah. You don't know what it looks like. Okay, and the longest, you let it to be 12 because the question says it's 12, right? The longest. Then this one is 11.8 and this is 9.8. Okay, so you put in the relevant corners correctly. So QR is, QR is 12. PQ is 11.8 and PR is 9.8. Okay, so you randomly draw a triangle so that it can help you visualize. Okay, and you just make sure the longest one is QR, the second longest one is 11.8, and the shortest one is 9.8. So I anyhow draw and I put it accordingly. And the question suddenly asks, okay, find the size of the largest angle in the triangle. Now, the largest angle in the triangle must be opposite the longest side. Okay, the largest angle in the triangle must be opposite the longest side. Now, why is that the case? You can just imagine this side here is very long. These two lines have to open big just to cover the whole side. That's why the angle is big. Or if you try to visualize the smallest one, then these two lines will just have to cover a shorter angle just to open up to 9.8. And hence the angle is, this angle must be smaller than this. Okay, so if you, logically speaking, you should be able to understand that the largest angle in the triangle, opposite it must be the longest side. So in other words, the question is asking you to find angle RPQ. Okay, now, so how do you find angle RPQ? So the first thing to identify is what you want to find and what they gave you in the triangle is 3 sides, 1 angle. So that is the hint for you that you need to use cosine rule. 3 sides, 1 angle. Okay, so when do you use it? Identify. Secondly, how to use it? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the formula list formula. A square equals to b square plus c square minus 2bc cos A. So you want to find angle RPQ. So clearly, this angle, you have to put it as angle RPQ. So what is A? A must be opposite angle RPQ. So 12. So remember, this A and the angle A must be opposite each other. So since you want to find angle RPQ, then it only makes logical sense that you put 12 opposite it. Okay, and everything else, place it inside B and C. Okay, now from here on, you just need to use algebra to try to find your cosine angle of RPQ. Okay, now I show you the one very common mistake that a lot of people will make. One common mistake a lot of you will make is to take all this and press your calculator. So what y'all will do is, y'all will press your calculator one shot here and tell me something, it's just some particular number beside cosine angle RPQ. And I need you to understand why this is wrong. Okay, this is wrong because this part here is multiplied together. 2 times 9.8 times 11.8 times cosine angle RPQ. You cannot add and subtract something that is multiplied to something else. These two you can add together, not an issue. But this is multiplied to cosine angle RPQ. So you cannot take 9.8 square plus 11.8 square and then minus that. So this is wrong. Okay, so please understand why this is wrong and don't make this mistake. So let's say if you want to continue, how do you do that? Okay, so there are a few ways you can do it. I show you one of the ways. Okay, now this is just going to be some number. If you want, you can work it out. But the key thing to understand that is negative. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring everything that I just highlighted in yellow to the left. So this is 2 times 9.8 times 11.8 times cosine RPQ. And it becomes positive because minus on the right, you bring to the left becomes negative. I mean, becomes positive. What is on the right? 9.8 square plus 11.8 square. And you bring the 12 square from the left to the right to get minus 12 square. And how do you find cosine RPQ? You take 9.8 square plus 11.8 square minus 12 square divided by 2 times 9.8 times 11.8. And you can find RPQ by taking the cosine inverse of the entire fraction. You press your calculator, you should be able to get 66.754 degrees or 66.8 degrees to 1 decimal place. Okay, so what I've just done is to show you how to use the cosine rule to find that angle. And the angle is just stuck together with the 2BC cosine of that angle. But all you need to do is just to do some rearrangement and you can find it. Okay, now some teachers will tell you to memorize another formula to help you find the angle. So what your teachers will say, angle A is cosine inverse b square plus c square minus a square over 2bc. Okay, and they'll tell you to memorize. Okay, now this is number one, not in the formula list. And if you want to use this, you can memorize. But please understand that this formula is the exact same formula as this. It's just that you made capital A the subject, which is everything I've done here. Basically, you move this to the left and you move the a square to the right. That's how you get b square plus c square minus a square. And then you divide by 2bc. Okay, so it's not in the formula list, and to me, don't need to memorize one because you can still use the one in the formula list, just do some rearrangement and you can get it. You just have to make sure when you do a rearrangement, you do it properly. Okay, your algebra don't screw up and then you'll be fine.